To say not yet. Okay, hello, vinyl community. Welcome back to another segment of Tony's LPs Are Us. Today we have a really good friend of mine, my brother-in-law, Big John, who's been collecting records since before high school, and he has older brothers, so you know what that means. He's been involved with records his whole life. And Big John's going to talk about OG labels with me today, and we picked out a number of the more prominent pressings and prominent labels like RCA, which we haven't picked out yet, right? We have Capitol.
Capitol, Warner. We like to look at the originals, and we want to look at original characteristics.
Yes, what we're going to do is this is just for the new vinyl hunter. Our aficionados already know this, but if you're hunting for vinyl at flea markets, yard sales, thrift shops, even record stores, you have to have a starting point. And what we did is we're going to give you these starting points. Like in real estate, which is paramount, that there's three things you follow, and that's location, location, location. And with vinyl hunting, there's three paramount aspects, and that's condition, condition, condition. And what you also want to look for are originality characteristics, like if it's an original shrink and if it has the original hype stickers. And the hype stickers, you can actually give you a sense of when that record was pressed. For instance, if it's Boston's first album and Boston's first album in shrink, and then it's Boston's first album with all the hit songs in it, theoretically, that's a later pressing because the hit songs weren't out when the record was initially released. So you get my idea. What you also want to look for is the original inner. Is it a Columbia inner on a Columbia record? And you could tell the vintage by the inners. Also, you want to look for certain records have a custom inner. We're not going to go into custom inners. These are generic label characteristics of that particular inner. Also, you want to look for the record label. That's what we're going to talk about today. Now, the record label will tell you so much about when the record was pressed. It's not as accurate as the matrix, which is the inner wax called dead wax, but that's a whole nother concept. And there's so many people more knowledgeable than me on the web and on the vinyl community that could talk about the dead wax. Also, Discogs is a great resource for that. We're going to start off with Columbia, and I want John to talk about this particular album. And John, I'll hold this up for you, and you just hold that up as well.
This is a perfect example of what you want to look for in a vintage vinyl record. And what I've never seen a Santana first pressing of the first album like this before. And why this particular album is so special is
well, let me show you. This has the original shrink, and it has the original price tag.
Price tag.
And this was when you walk into a record shop, in the day, but when we were young, there was a chart on the wall and it said ABCD, and that would correspond with $6.98, $7.98, $8.98, or $4.98. And we're going to go to the record here. And this record is a first press Columbia. You could talk about the inner, John, and also talk about the label, please.
What I love about this album, this has a beautiful Columbia inner sleeve from 1970 or 69 when this album came out. It has vintage artists, it has Bob Dylan and all the vintage artists, Chicago, from that era. So this is from 1970.
And another thing, if you see inners get switched. If you go to a record store, inners get switched. It's not the store's problem. It's not the store's fault. But when they buy a record, people switch them out. They get mixed up. When you pull out,
they buy it from individual collectors.
What I would also speak to is that if you had the Santana record, and then you have an inner that has a Boston record, then that is not the correct inner for Columbia.
So you want to try to match the inner with the era
and the ear.
with the record.
Yeah. John,
that affects the value of the record.
Show them the label on this one, John.
But what's stunning about this particular copy?
This is nice.
This album came out in 1970, which is the final year of what we know of the 2i Columbia. The 2i Columbia.
Can you explain what the eyes are, John?
Well, that's the logo of Columbia Records. And they ran this from 1965 to 1970. And this is one of the last big albums that they released in 1970. But this album has absolutely stunning gloss. It doesn't look like it's ever been played.
And this is from 1970.
69,
70, right. And this
it might not be a first pressing, but it's an early pressing.
I don't believe this was in mono, correct?
This was by 68.
The early Dylans were in mono.
Yeah, they stopped doing monos in 68. So anything that came out at 68 or later in mono, if it exists, it's super rare.
All right. Well, what we're going to do, John, I'm going to give you some other Columbias to talk about, some other stunning examples from our collection. And John, tell us again, you've been collecting for how long now?
Since 1977.
Wow.
My first album was Magical Mystery Tour, orange label, Capitol. I bought it in high school. That was the only record in my collection back then.
Wow. Well, I said you had older brothers, so you were turned on.
Yeah. I found out later, I discussed with my brother Joe, that his very first record was also Magical Mystery Tour. But he bought it. He bought it when it first came out in 1967.
Wow. All right, John. Well, we're going miles ahead, and here's this is what we're going to show here is the label. This is the inner. John will talk about this pressing.
This album is one of the legendary jazz albums from circa 1962 or so. With Miles Davis, might have been as early as 60.
With Gil Evans, his collaborator.
And what makes this album so nice, it has the original Columbia inner sleeve from the era. This is what you want to look for. This tells you that this is a first pressing or an early pressing or a pressing from the era.
It also indicates that the previous owner took the care to save the inner inside. What we do is, John and I go vinyl hunting, and we've been vinyl hunting for years and years. I actually are going to start to show what I get from estate sales. But what we do is, once we get a record that has an original inner, we will replace it with either a rice sleeve or a brand new white paper sleeve, and we'll keep the inner inside. We do not throw away the inners. The inners are sacrosanct. I actually have a box of original inners.
We want to match the inner sleeve with the record.
And here's an example of that changed inner. That's a 6i.
This is, I've only seen this as a reissue. In this condition, a Miles Davis 6i. These are super rare. If you can see in the camera, this is absolutely a gorgeous, gorgeous find.
Now, again, I'm going to reiterate, the dead wax is your most accurate indication of the press, but this is a starting point. And even if you're seeing this, you're going to pick it up anyway.
Yeah,
you're not going to pussyfoot around.
I'm not an expert with dead wax, but I know if I see a vintage 6i Columbia label, then I know.
This is actually an earlier 6i, John. Talk about Gene Krupa.
Oh, yeah, another vintage jazz record.
And that's a different inner.
It has a different inner.
A previous inner. You can see that picks up.
They ran this inner in the early 60s to the mid 60s. This is
in perfect condition because it was well saved by the original owner.
Again, another gorgeous 6i Columbia Gene Krupa record. Absolutely stunning.
And here you can see on the back of this 6i LP is Gene Krupa. It advertises some other LPs of the era, and the liner notes of these early vinyls are incredible.
Yeah, another thing I want to point out on these early vinyls, especially on the Columbias, you see this, these lines, and it says LP, LP, and the
Spine.
and the spine. That's an indication that's an early or original.
John, what would you say? 50s, 57, 58, 59?
I'm not 100.
It might have a date. We're not sure.
Based on, I'm probably saying circa 59, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't really know this record.
Yeah, this
based on the looks, it's probably
G Group
50s.
Was a world-renowned drummer who played with all the major big dance bands. He went out on his own. This is one of my treasures.
That's an incredible find.
What we're going to do now is we're going to move to a more modern Columbia pressing and label. And John, you could talk about this one.
Okay, this is circa 1969. Again, same era as the Santana, Taj Mahal. This one has a little more wear on the cover. I would rate this cover as a VG plus because it has the ring wear.
Or VG. Or I would say VG.
And it has a
little split, so that would make it a VG.
But it's still a nice find.
Show them the inner.
Same inner, same vintage or similar inner to the Santana. This one split. It's yellowed. The Santana is white. That is absolutely perfect inner, the Santana. But in 1970, they switched over to this Columbia Records label. Where it says Columbia, it's gold.
So they switched.
This is a 1970 pressing.
On the cusp of the Santana, they switched to this.
Yeah, so
69, 70, this is over 70.
They ran this label for almost 20 years.
And here
this is the most common.
And here on this inner
vintage Columbia label.
And here in this inner, these are for me. This is a history of rock and roll, the history of America. You can see here Jeff Beck, Tommy Cash, Fleetwood Mac, English Rose, Walter Jackson, Peaches and Herb. So this is the history of rock and roll.
A little bit later. I would say that was pressed in 70 or 71.
And what we're going to do, John, we're going to switch over to another prominent label, which is Capitol. And Capitol became one of the biggest labels in the world with before the Beatles, because it had Nat Cole, had Sinatra, had Dean Martin. It had I'm not sure if Bing Crosby may have been on Capitol.
No, I don't think he was.
On MCA.
He was Decca.
So John, talk about this record here.
Okay, Swings Easy. This one is a stunning early Capitol pressing. And what makes this stunning? How you could tell, you see this inner sleeve? It's made out of wax paper. It's disintegrating. You see an inner sleeve wax paper like this? You know it's from the 1950s.
I didn't even know this was in there, John. Yeah, I pulled out some labels. And talk about this early Capitol label. Is this a mono? This is a mono.
Well, stereo didn't exist yet when this came out.
Oh, right.
There's an original Capitol label. See that? Original Capitol, black, pre-Rainbow Capitol. They ran the Rainbow Capitol circa 1958, 59. This is when they went to a 12-inch format, or the original Columbia format. There were two formats of vinyl records when they first came out after the 78. There was the 45, which was developed by RCA Records, which came in a box of 45s. So you had an opera, you had like 30 45s. And then Columbia came out with a format on 10-inch, a 10-inch 33 1/3. But that didn't have enough information, so they eventually went to 12-inch. This is one of their early 12-inch releases.
Big John, you just reminded me of a good point. I was talking to someone the other day when I was vinyl hunting, a younger hunter on the prowl. The term album came from what John just spoke about. There were albums like a photo album.
In the 78s, they were actually in an album.
And later on, what year was the album, the 12-inch incorporated?
They were developed in the 1930s, but because of World War II, they had to focus the intention on the war effort. So they didn't start releasing them until after World War II, sometime in the late 40s, early 50s.
And here we have another. We're still with Capitol. Here we have another Frank album, which I talked about on one of my videos. This is a classic.
This is an award-winning cover. Won a Grammy Award.
It was actually the first Grammy Award for cover.
Yeah, he discussed this in the previous, and this is a great cover.
Here you have an inner, and the record's in there.
This is an original inner from the era, and this is an early Columbia pressing, Capitol pressing, Rainbow Capitol, which most people associate with the Beach Boys and the Beatles, but Sinatra in the late 50s had a Capitol, a Rainbow Capitol.
And here you see on this Capitol ads for Sinatra records. I would think Duke Ellington's on here. I can't see people. Brenda Starr. It's just, this is another history of the Songbook of America. That's what basically.
What the inner sleeve tells you, if you're lucky enough to find a record with an original inner sleeves, you can date the record. You don't have to go crazy figuring out the dead wax. The inner sleeve will tell you. The label will give you an idea. It may not be the first pressing,
right? But I want to stress though that this is a starting point, and the label with the dead wax, and like I said.
Right, there are other experts.
There's experts out there that I admire. We watch the vinyl community videos, and then you could have volumes of dead wax information. Every company had their own labeling system. The people who invented the labeling system, unfortunately, are no longer with us. So it's up to us to keep this going and explain to everybody. Before I forget, I as you know in my videos, I also have a original audiophile sounding pressing that could be had for under $10, depending on where you go. And that is this 12-inch up here, which I'm going to be talking about in a few minutes. Okay, next up we have is another Rainbow Capitol. I want you to talk about this country artist who's legendary.
Yeah. Now, I'm not a big country fan, but I would, if I see something
you would snag that.
I would snag this simply because it's vintage. Name you know, Buck Owens, famous country guy. It has the original shrink wrap, original Capitol characteristics.
Now, I want to just point out. Now, John, when was the first time? I don't know if you're going to say the same thing I will, but when's the first time you heard the name Buck Owens that you remember consciously?
Oh, Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Exactly. Listening to on my porch, listening to Buck Owens, and I don't know the song.
I also remember him from Hee Haw. I did watch episodes of Hee Haw growing up as a kid. He was on Hee Haw.
Here's a Capitol, Rainbow Capitol in a regular white sleeve, which we replaced with the original inner. And now we're going to go to something a little bit more familiar to all you young folks out there. And John, I want you to talk about these.
Yeah, you could talk hours about the Beatles, but the Beatles released albums on every format. No, this is Revolver, which of course everybody's familiar with. All the vinyl communities are familiar with the new box set.
check out my one of my early videos on my channel. Just with my Revolver collection. And here we have, we don't have the original inner in this particular album, but here's the label.
Actually, this probably came with a white paper sleeve because this is not the first pressing, but it's very cool.
But it's an Apple pressing.
It was pressed on Apple.
Capitol.
It's in the 70s, circa 71. And between 71 and 79, they press it on Apple.
Let me see if I can get it better.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see that there. But everyone knows the Apple. This is the Apple Core. And Capitol also have purple Capitals
and the red Capitol. This was only pressed on the red Capitol for like 1 year. Those are very rare.
No Rainbow Capitol Revolver. I have Rainbow.
The original was was the Rainbow Capital, of course. They had the mono and the stereo version. That's another thing you want to look for in a characteristic of a record. You want to look, the mono version will tell you it's a first pressing. Yes, this is a super rare copy of Revolver simply because of the label. They only press these for like 2 years.
And these pressings sound extraordinarily well. These are very desirable, the Green Capitals.
Yeah, I don't have very many Green Capital Beatles because
I think I have some George Harrison Green Capitals.
I do have a couple.
Right,
I do have a couple. I believe I have a Magical Mystery Tour.
Right. And this is, what year were these again? 74?
No. After the Rainbow Capital in 69 to 70.
Okay, and this is a stereo, and it still has...
Yeah, they didn't press monos then.
It still has the original shrink. This is one of my stereo Revolvers.
Yeah, the Green Capital is very nice. Of course, if you're collecting Beatles, you want the original, the Rainbow Capital mono if possible, if you want the first press.
John, I'm going to skip around. I just want to show this inner. This is a rare one that John didn't even know about.
Yeah, this is really nice.
Yeah, we're back to Columbia.
I've never seen this except for now. Tony just showed it to me. It may not be in the best condition, but what's nice about this is a Sinatra Christmas record that I didn't even know existed. Christmas
Sinatra has, I would think, 6 or 7 compilations of Christmas albums. This may be the first, and there may be variants of the cover, but this is what I wanted to show.
And most likely it was the first LP because he was on Columbia before he was on Capitol, and that was before Reprise.
And here's a 6-eye, beautiful 6-eye.
Thinking late 1950s.
But John, talk about this great inner. It actually tells you how to take care of your needle.
This inner sleeve
is instructive inner.
Is special because it shows the technology of the day. Not only does it show all the different artists, but it shows the equipment, the stereo equipment that this was, not even stereo, hi-fi equipment that was played on in the era. This is a great inner sleeve. Collectors love this kind of stuff.
And this also tells you about a diamond needle, sapphire needle, and osmium needle, which I don't think we use that technology anymore, that material. But this is the console. Like John said, these were probably high fidelity and not stereo yet. But this is a prize inner. And like I said, I keep the inner. And what I do is I put it in a white sleeve and keep the inner with the record if it comes to it. I also have a collection of inners, and I'll match them as I get them. As a collector, I would like to have everything authenticated. And that's to do it. Well, we're going to switch over now because we're really running out of time. We're going to go over to Mercury. You want to talk a little bit about Mercury?
Yeah, actually, you're more of a Mercury expert than I am. But yeah.
Well, I want you to talk about the labels. And what I do is I pulled out some early platters, Diana Washington. As you know, Rod Stewart was on Mercury. The Faces were on Mercury, right?
The Mercury pressings were great.
The Mercury pressings
amazing.
Are still great. The engineers at Mercury Records, I just know they're going to sound. Some of my Rod Stewarts, for instance, and I'll talk about this later, but a great OG pressing is not as good as a wink to a blind horse.
Yeah, Faces. Those are very difficult to find.
And let me just.
This is a wonderful platters. This is in really nice shape. This is a mono. You could tell it says high fidelity. So that means it's probably an earlier first pressing because up till 1968, they released between 58 and 68, they released a mono version and a stereo version.
There are so many variants of the platters that you would need an encyclopedia to keep track.
This is a really nice one.
But whenever I see the platters, I buy them. And this is the heavy cardboard. These things, this is like 60 years old. And here's the label.
Yeah, this is wonderful. This is a wonderful Mercury label.
And that's mono.
Mono. See that?
And I'm going to show you, John, talk about this. This is one of the reissued Mercury labels.
Yeah, this was released probably in the mid-1970s.
That's a stereo copy.
And then the mid 1970s was not known
Get that
for.
back so you can get more color in
This is a stereo version of it. Yeah.
You talk, I'll hold it up.
That's the Red Mercury label. Yeah. That was mid 70s, probably like 74 or so.
And, you know, The Great Pretender, Twilight Time, Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, My Prayer, Only You, a standard. They're all standards. This group is gives me chills. It's the epitome of the doo-wop as they break to rock and roll. Great stuff.
That's fun.
And here I have another Mercury Hi-Fi. This is a later reissue. And you can talk about that label.
75 to 77.
And that's an original inner? Yes.
That's an original inner.
For the era.
And this is the scene of Chicago. Now, Warner Brothers had the Burbank records. Mercury counterparted with the Chicago scene on their label.
Thank you, John. And John, tell us a little bit about what you focus on. I know you're into imports.
Well, I like imports.
You can see why we call him Big John. I need to.
But right now, I like originality in the vinyl.
Well, tell us about your Japanese collection.
Oh, yeah.
Japanese pressings. John actually would import Japanese pressings from Japan, and he would bundle them. And I always got some great Japanese pressings at Christmas time.
I would buy
Tell
them.
them how the way to buy from Japan.
Well, if now it's hard because the rates have gone up. But when I bought them, the rates were like $16 for a single album, and if you bundle them, you could get 5 or 6 albums for like maybe $40.
Right. John was actually bidding on records that no one would bid on.
Yeah, right. 99 cents. And Japan, they had a surplus of Santana, which are popular here, but over there they weren't popular.
Tom Jones.
Yeah.
Really,
a lot of stuff.
Dean Martin, but he would bundle it. So thanks for those Japanese gifts.
Yes. So I needed to fill the thing to make my quota to save money, and I would buy a couple for Tony. I got a copy for me, a copy for Tony, put it on. Nobody else bid on it. I get these nice Japanese pressings for about $12 each.
And John, this is a cool Platters record you don't see too often. It's the Platters Sing Latino. They actually needed to fill their quotas or just to sell records. Even Dean Martin had Dean Martin sings Italian. Nat Cole sings Latin. Dean Martin sings Latin. Here we have the Platters Sing Latino, and I'll talk about this record a little bit. That's an original.
Yeah.
I don't even think this was reissued.
Actually, I'm not the expert on this, but this is a nice find. I would, if I found a copy of this, I don't have one of these, so I don't really know this record.
Well, here's the label. This is a stereo original or early Mercury.
This is probably circa 1965.
And look at
my guess,
John. This is
maybe 67.
John, the infamous Teardrop. You could talk about that.
I don't know if that's the original.
That's a Teardrop replica.
Yeah.
But talk about the Teardrop.
Okay.
Columbia had Teardrop.
Yeah, in the 60s.
You may see some Miles Davis.
Yeah.
If you see this sleeve like this usually
particular sleeve is from a Japanese pressing because they can tell by the material. But the original, a lot of the original Columbias came up with a version of the Teardrop sleeve. Me personally, I like the paper sleeve with all the advertisements on it because that helps you date the record. But if you see a Teardrop sleeve that looks vintage, that may be an original sleeve.
And I would always replace these because these are tough to get back into your jacket.
I don't like them. I'm not a fan of the Teardrop.
We keep them folded in the record if you can. But usually, if it's like I said, this is this was a later package. This may be from a different album, but these are called Teardrops. What we're going to do now, John, is move over to Warner Brothers.
Yeah,
early Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers, here's a great record, and these sound great. And you could talk about this group because I know you love it.
Yeah, Association, 1960s. They're kind of mellow, but they have a nice sound.
Well, actually, I was surprised. There's some really jamming rockers on some of these, which are deep cuts.
Yeah,
which are deep cuts. Well, this has actually on it, Cherish, Don't Blame It on Me, I'll Be Your Own Man, Along Comes Mary. So this is a classic, and this is, we have here as an original inner.
Yeah, this inner, I would date from 67, 68. And you could tell from the artists on here. And this logo here, this W7 logo, that's later 60s. And this is a green, they ran that green label from like 1967 to 1972, 73.
This is a very desirable label for some groups that we're going to talk about.
Grateful Dead.
Grateful Dead, Black Sabbath.
Oh, yeah, Black Sabbath, original Warner
Deep
stuff.
Purple? Was on Warner? No, Deep Purple. Not sure now. I'm having a senior moment. But Green Warner, look for that.
Yeah, they were on Warner.
Yeah,
I don't think they were. I didn't see any too many. But,
well, I think Machine Head is a
possibly.
Head,
I've
right.
never seen a
Machine Head is one of my records that I
constantly. It's pressed in 72. It probably was on a green label. But this
is another one here.
This is one of the Dead's most iconic records.
And talk about the condition. This is condition.
Beautiful condition cover. And a nice inner.
We're actually going to go see What's Left of the Dead in June.
Yes, we
are.
With
my son. Yeah, it's going to be a great time. Talk about this inner.
What's nice about this inner, it has a promotional, in the early 70s, Warner had this promotional campaign to
get samplers.
For the sampler records, and they're very highly collectible.
Actually,
I'm saying this is probably from like 1973,
John, actually,
74.
I'm going. Maybe we could do that while you're still in the area. We'll do a sample video.
Okay, this one here, this is an early. I don't know if this is an original, but this is a really nice early green label, American Beauty. This is gorgeous.
You handle this with white gloves.
Yeah.
These are very desirable, and even the reissues.
And they sound amazing.
What's good about companies that reissue, that companies that really care, will actually try to replicate the original.
You could probably.
Original,
I believe
label.
There's a 180-gram new reissue version of that.
I think I may have that here.
You have one, yes.
Yeah, here
it is. Yep. And a plastic sleeve.
So you don't get that panache as the sleeve.
It doesn't have the W7 logo like we saw before on the other album, but this is a 180-gram reissue, German pressing, but they did a really nice job to make it look like the original.
Show the album. I'll put this back.
Same cover. It looks like an original.
It's a sturdy cardboard.
Heavyweight, 180-gram. Nice, beautiful reissue.
Now that we're showing off our Dead collection, here's another vintage
Dead. This is a good one. I don't even think I have a copy of this one. This could be their first album, one of their earlier ones. And this is a sample, a reissue. Yeah, right. This is the Burbank label.
That's a reissue of Warner.
Yeah, this label was predominant in the.
I'll hold that up while you talk here. Yeah.
Mid 1970s, like 75 to 78. So this is a reissue, but it's a nice reissue. 180 grams.
Well, it's a reissue.
That's 180 grams. It's probably like 120 grams.
This is let me just point out, this is a reissue, but it's an original
on Warner.
Vintage. It's not. It's a reissue.
It's a Warner pressing.
It's a subsequent pressing from the original, but these are still vintage. This is what
it's still a vintage.
I was buying in high
school.
It's not a first, but these are considered vintage.
Yeah, that's what I would bought the album when I was 17 years old. That's what I would get.
Doobie Brothers. Anybody who's on Warner, Black Sabbath again, Deep Purple
again. You want to match the label with the era that you're looking at. Now, if you bought a copy of Rumors, the first pressing would be on that label because that was the label of the day.
All 50 million that were sold have that label on it. So, and here we're going to move back now, John. Talk a little bit about these.
These are fun.
These are great examples.
Unfortunately, these are very, very, very common. They're easy to find, but they sound great. and they have that wonderful vintage quality we were talking about. This particular is an original stereo gold label.
And here you see a teardrop again.
Warner.
An original teardrop.
The Stereophonic. In the mid-'60s, they released their records on either a gold label to indicate it was a stereo or a gray label to indicate that it's a mono. And I don't know, folk music is not exactly popular right now, but this is a great folk record of the day. And this is in absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous condition. And they sound really nice.
Okay, John, here, I'll put that away. Here, talk about this one.
Okay.
This is another Peter, Paul, and Mary. And by the way, these all sound fantastic. It's a tube chain. You could get these for $3 or $4, maybe $1, but these sound great if you want some good harmonies.
Yeah, if you have a budget and you're looking for vintage, these are nice. And this is a Vitaphonic high fidelity. What Vitaphonic means, it's an early first pressing Warner Brothers, and this has a nice inner. Gives the
is that an original? It's close.
That's an original.
Close.
I believe
right.
This is an original.
Talk about some of the people who were showing here.
Well,
probably Bill Cosby,
Bill
right?
Bill Cosby, Vic Damone, Alan Sherman. You could see.
So if you were looking for something in the budget bin and you're not sure, these sound great. You want condition, of course. Some of these are VG.
These
VG
are not
plus.
hard to find in great condition. They're very common.
These are mono, right, John?
This is a mono. See the gray color? Let's see. Wait. Yeah. That's the gray Vitaphonic Warner. They're not. These were around in the earlier part of the '60s, between.
Here's another example of the gray.
66.
Yeah, teardrop.
Here's a gray.
That's in really good condition.
In the wind. I really like this album a lot. Of course, these are very common, and this is made out of a different material. This is the American style inner. That's the original inner, and this is absolutely nice condition. Look at this.
Now, usually, in most cases, high fidelity would indicate mono, but I've seen high fidelity stereo. High fidelity was a term that was phased out. This is a monophonic high fidelity. You also see high fidelity without mono, without stereo, but they're mono. Like I said, you'd also see on some labels high fidelity in stereo, correct?
Yes.
But I would, at first glance,
high fidelity is usually a euphemism.
Yeah,
there's a stereo version
high
for
quality.
And but the high fidelity ones are what the mono ones are what the collectors are looking for.
Now we're going to close out with some of John's
this
favorite
next
group.
one is almost like a holy grail of a record. Super rare. And it's fun to
this
find. Group
has, and you vinyl community aficionados all know that every record store day, there's always this group always has a great release.
And I've gotten many of them thanks to Tony. Yes, Christmas presents.
Right.
Some of my favorite records are
these are OG.
Group.
These are OG. These are originals. And let me just see what we have here. I'll line it up for you.
This one is a stunner.
There you go.
1967, The Doors' first album.
Break On Through.
Yeah, this is a mono pressing, and we know this is an original pressing because of the inner sleeve. It was the I don't know if it's a first pressing. I'm not an expert on dead wax, but I know this is an early one. This is the kind of record collectors love, with this inner sleeve, and it was released on the gold label, Elektra label.
That's a very good example, isn't it, John?
Yeah, let's see if I could get that straight.
Yeah.
See that gold label? This is what you want.
Right there.
And a Doors record. And this is This is absolutely, I would consider this particular copy excellent. May need a cleaning, but there's no scratches on it.
I could see here that I've cleaned this record. We're not going to go into the dead wax yet. That would actually tell you.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not an expert with dead wax, but I know I see a good label when I see it. I'll snag that one for sure.
This you're not going to see in a bin. You're going to see this up on the wall. This will be up on the wall.
This is a collector's dream. This first 1967
And
Doors.
we're going to go to conclude this segment. We're going to do a Doors reissue. It's not considered a reissue. It's just the progression of the label.
Yeah, this is you see the cars on the inner sleeve.
That'll give you indication when this was pressed.
Was probably pressed
the 80s.
1980.
1980.
Circa 1980. Right. And by that time they went with a red Electra label, and I could tell by the indentation was probably pressed by Atlantic Records.
And these records,
which was owned by Warner, so this is a Warner pressing.
Right. And Analog Productions did the whole line a few years ago. The whole line of Doors on 45 RPM, and I've done some ABs, and the mono original pressings are just as good. Of course, the Analog Productions are mint. They're 45. They sound, the Doors were in the room, so if you could pick those up. And that concludes this segment of labels. We're going to do some other ones with other labels, but we've taken up a lot of time. We try to keep these under an hour. John, any more final thoughts about labels and what to look for?
Keep hunting.
Keep hunting,
Keep
right?
hunting.
Right.
Remember, condition. Look for shrink wrap. Look for that hype sticker. And look at the inner and look at the label. And the label tells you a lot about a record.
Of course, if it's a rare, historically significant record, even on lower conditions, I would pick it up. But if it's an album, say for instance, Kruger Mellencamp, would sound great. The Riva,
that's a nice.
They
label.
sound great. But what I do
80s,
is
they're easy to find
when you're crate digging and you're looking through and you're excited. If it's a record that you're going to find again, look at the spine, because a lot of times the spines can crack and they're worn. And for me to have that quality, which is condition, always look at the spine. And you may forget, you'll get it back and you'll say, oh, the spine is cracked or whatever. But there's so many things to go for. And what you do is it just takes experience. You have to go through bins and bins and bins. And you'll get there. We've been doing it for a long time. What I'm going to do is close it out and talk about a record we just listened to earlier. And it's part of my channel. I'm going to give you an OG pressing that's not audiophile pressing, but sounds audiophile and actually beats audiophile pressings in a number of ways. And that is this 12-inch EP of The Firm. And you can see this is a rare one because this is the 12-inch generic sleeve, but it has a hype sticker. Okay, and this is The Firm on Atlantic. And the hit on this was the extended Radioactive. And John, we know who's on this. Paul Rogers.
Yes.
Paul Rogers and Jimmy Page. Okay. Now this record, it still has the price on it. When I bought it from a record shop, was $349. This is one of my favorite records. It has the original inner. I'll show you that.
Yeah, that's a 1980.
1980. This is a thin
1980s, early 80s.
Typical pressed. It has the Atlantic on one side. It has the Firm on the other. So this is Radioactive, 12-inch. Radioactive. The song Radioactive from The Firm from this album does not sound as good as the 12-inch. I have that.
Yeah,
that is a mediocre pressing.
Nice bass, nice high end, great
high end. I forget the drummer, but the drummer with the cymbals and brushes and beat, this is amazing. We just put it on, and this is in mint condition. I must have played this record 40 times. If you keep your records clean, as some of the vinyl community tell you, Keep your records clean. Keep your stylus clean. Change the stylus when it's worn. These records will they're going to outlast us. Okay, well, that's it. Big John, thanks a lot. It was a great time. I hope you had a good time. And hit the subscribe button because we're going to bring John on a lot. And what we want to do is we want to get your comments. I have some John actually gave me some great ideas on some other topics, and this was John's idea. Thanks a lot, Big John.
All right.
Keep
digging.
Keep rocking.
Yeah,
keep rocking.
Digging.
And everything else, just stay safe and check. Thank you.